crimes, the true definition, as defined back in 1939, is now synonymous with the full range of fraud committed by businesses and governmental professionals. These crimes are characterized by deceit, concealment, or violation of trust, and are not dependent on the application or threat of physical force or violence. Good afternoon. My name is Gail Brickman Glasser. I'm going to tell you a horrific story regarding insurance fraud, banking fraud, financial abuse done to seniors. Saying this is my family's story of the fraud and abuse that was perpetrated on my parents and many other seniors in Illinois. To me, this is a heart-wrenching story. The fraud started shortly after I reached out to a college planning consultant to help me look for colleges for my daughter. It just so happened he was a good friend and a fraternity brother 30 years earlier, my late brother. Peter, the family friend, trusted advisor, and his family would share birthdays and holidays with my family. He wormed his way into being a second son. Unbeknownst to us was that Peter had previously been convicted of 2 cases of insurance fraud. He never divulged that information to us. The state of Illinois insurance site only tells the public if the agent is licensed. The state of Illinois isn't doing their job to protect the citizens of Illinois by sharing this information. The consumer deserves to know about the state certified professionals they are working with, especially with regards to financial dealings. Peter even perjured himself when he would self-certify when renewing his producer's license and his E&O insurance by never divulging his past felonies. The state should have caught this with their own cross-check of his background and done their due diligence, denying him his renewal. The director stated after 3 months supervision that he was not rehabilitated, but Illinois gave Peter his license back for a token fine of $10,000. If they would have done their job back then, my parents and other seniors wouldn't have lost all their assets to this fraud. A year after he came back into our lives, he started her cell approach as a concerned advisor to my parents. He was pushing my parents into purchasing more life insurance on my dad. He advised us that my father was underinsured and that if something happened to him and my mother, I would have to sell all their assets and their manufacturing plant to cover the estate tax due when they would pass away. Peter was shopping for insurance on my dad before he even discussed this idea with my parents. My father had a major heart attack when he was 39. He had active prostate cancer and was diagnosed with melanoma on his face. He also suffered from traumatic brain injury that brought on dementia. But Peter sold the concept to my parents that they will buy 2 policies, sell one within 3 to 6 months to pay for the first policy completely. Peter would always fill out all the paperwork after my father would sign the documents. You know that old proverbial message, trust me, was always used by Peter. My father and mother trusted him. Shame on them. Peter had many accomplices to help him pull off this fraud. A CPA who doctored my parents' financial records to make it look as if they had ample assets so they would qualify for high premiums of life insurance. 2 attorneys who drew up new trust and ILETS agreements. Each attorney made themselves trustee, beneficiary, and executor of my father's estate. I have recently found new documents that the attorney gave to the bank that he also was the owner of my dad's policies. This is totally illegal, and the bank should have known all of this. Neither one of the attorneys ever met or spoke with my parents. Initially, my father had to pay the first premium of $56,000. Peter never gave my parents any paperwork to show the true premiums. My father and mother were told by Peter that there would be no out-of-pocket money, and this would be returned. I have come to know that this was called rebating, and it's illegal. Peter and the bank should have known the laws of insurance rebating. This was a brand new bank that wanted to grow aggressively. The CPA, the attorney, and Peter showed the bank how they could grow their assets by doing premium finance on these life settlement policies. My parents only used one bank for all the years they were married, and at this time it was 50 plus years. My parents were told that they had to use this bank because they knew how to work with these insurance concepts. The vice president of the bank came to my parents' house. Why would someone drive 90 miles for this? We had no idea at this time that the bank was involved in the fraud. The bank should have known if they were doing premium financing and working with life settlements, what the state and federal laws and licenses are required to handle these financial vehicles. If they would have pulled up the Supervisory Insight Winter Edition regarding SLS, it would have warned the bank of all the issues to be aware of. It states that a bank must apply for permission prior to doing so. The bank never did look into any of this. I have always been told, and I keep reading through all of my learning, that the bank should be your first line of protection from fraud. The bank is one of the biggest reasons my parents lost everything. The life insurance policies were issued the 27th day of December, so the insurance company can look good on their books, and they ignored all the red flags in front of them. It's horrifying, all the information that the insurance company ignored. It seems as if they didn't even look at the application where it stated that my father's assets would be used. There are protocols that insurance companies use to determine if these kinds of policies are stole. A stole is a stranger-owned life insurance policy, usually owned by investment groups that will buy them from the insured. This is the start of the fraud to businesses. Peter and the attorney were so worried because my father's financials and that they thought he wouldn't qualify. So they started doctoring up all the financials. Peter went on to his own accountant, who never met my parents, and sent the insurance company a letter stating that my father could afford the insurance. Just 6 weeks ago, I found out about this information. I contacted the accountant. He tried to cover up his action and kept telling me how Peter defrauded him. I told both the vice president and the president of the bank that the numbers didn't look right, as Peter and the banker told us that all the funds from the loans were used up. Here comes our surprise. Each of the life insurance policies were $279,000. Yes, $279,000 per year. That's almost $560,000 annually. The bank had my parents' federal tax returns, listed all of their money in the market and all their other assets. They knew down to the penny what they had. How could they have done this? The bank is getting nervous and kept going after my parents to get paid back on the premium finance loans, which now my parents understood their house and their manufacturing plant were included, as well as the collateral along with the 2 life insurance policies. At this point, my father's brain function and his dementia was in full blown. His cancer was active. My mother, who was 85, already very frail, had a heart attack from all the stress. The bank got very nervous when I kept telling them that something is wrong. I had no idea there were many other seniors, veterans, and businesses that were defrauded by this bank and another bank along with other different agents. That's why the bank was panicking. A minimum of 20 other seniors were all losing their loans at the same time. Finally, the bank contacted someone who supposedly was a guru on life insurance policies and life settlements. Another Peter, who was also a felon due to insurance fraud, came and met my parents. Peter was going to help my parents solve the insurance mystery. He required an initial payment of $15,000. It stated in emails that he contacted the insurance company and inquired about rescinding the policy, all within 2 years of the policy being enforced. The insurance company never rescinded either policy. By the time the insurer was not communicating, the bank was getting aggressive regarding to the loan payback, and Peter wanted more money to solve the case. There was no more money left in the Brickman's pot, so Peter had an idea that stole both my father's last amount of his money and my complete retirement from our IRAs. The state's attorney filed felony charges against Peter, but they forgot to go after the company who helped Peter to steal our money. This is where things really get unsavory and interesting at the same time. The FBI and the state's attorney worked with this Peter to understand the case. They sat in many meetings with him, but eventually they came to my office to discuss this fraud. So who do you trust? The bank tried having my parents sign new documents stating the policies were still alive, which they knew they weren't, as the bank received lapse notices from the insurance company, and we were not informed. Agent Peter got the lapse notice, the attorneys got the lapse notice, but my father never received any documentation from the insurance company at any time. My parents couldn't even buy their medicine. Nothing luxurious, just life-sustaining medicine they couldn't afford anymore. They lost their manufacturing plant that they built in 1958, and the trusted bank tried kicking my parents out of their condo at the age of 87. Forcing my parents to refinance their condo from the bank. This truly was senior financial abuse at its worst. As to the question of culpability, the state of Illinois failed to protect my parents and many other seniors to a tune of multi-millions of dollars. They let businesses and our veterans, four-star generals and many others, lose their businesses due to this fraud. Many of our insurance companies turned a blind eye to all the different agents falsifying applications, signatures, net wealth, etc. The insurer had ample time to reach out with an investigator to get a heads up on what indiscretions was perpetrated on their client. It took 2 years after the court case was complete, and it was not because they wanted to offer retribution. No. Instead, they wanted me to tell them who others were also scammed by the agent. While other insurers acted on these kinds of cases, the carrier chose to sit on their hands. One of the other insurer carrier actually went to the state, told them about the fraud, told them to stop it, and the state did nothing. Let me tell you about my parents. I think it's an important piece, and how very bright people could get scammed, and how no one should ever be ashamed. My parents were very educated people. My dad was an aeronautical engineer. He helped NASA, military, aerospace. My mom was a unique woman. She earned her accounting degree from the University of Illinois. Back then, women didn't go to college, let alone get degrees. This demonstrates that anyone could get scammed, regardless who they are. Educated, it doesn't matter. These scams are so highly thought out that unless you have that mindset to hurt someone, you could never know you're getting scammed. My parents only gave to charity and helped others. And the worst part for my parents were that they needed to be helped and go on charity. I have solutions of how to combat some of this fraud. We have known about this fraud for over 25 years, that this was coming, that our seniors were going to start hitting the baby boom years. I know I can help others, but I also know that it has taken me years to figure out this fraud. I don't know if our seniors have that much time. I hope they do, but I don't know if they do. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to speak and tell my parents' story. Thank you.